My name is Clarence Shephard. I answer to the name of Bud. You know, it's but anyway, when the day I was 18 years old, let me tell you,
Just go ahead with where you were born and a little bit about, yeah.
All right. I was actually born in Greensboro in 1925. My family moved to Burlington in 1926, and I went to school in Burlington and Graham, and my senior high school time was in Graham. And the morning that I became 18, when I woke up that morning, I got dressed and told my mother I was going to Greensboro and then enlist in the Air Force up at ORD in Greensboro, and that's what I did. And then they called me and sent me to, had me to go to Camp Croft in South Carolina to be sworn in. And when I got back, orders came for me to report to Fort Bragg, and then from Fort Bragg, they sent me right down to Keesley Field in Mississippi to take my basic training. After that, the basic training, they sent me to Las Vegas Army Air Base in Las Vegas, and there I took my gunnery school training out there, and then they sent me to Ardmore, Oklahoma for my overseas training. And after this, we flew to England, and that's where this all took about 9 months through all of this training, and I was we were flying out of Peterborough, England, and we were flying in bombing Germany, and on my fourth mission, we got shot down over Germany, and that's where really I spent the rest of the war in a German prison camp. See, so, but anyway, go ahead.
Tell us a little bit about your situation when you got shot down. You were flying at what, say 35,000 feet?
Yeah, we were up, it was about 35,000 feet, and I was flying the tail that day, and the Germans were shooting up barrage flak, and we had to fly right through it. You can't go under it, and you can't go over it. It's but when you get to the target, you accept what's there, and that's it. And
as a tail gunner, you had to do a circle through that flak, and you saw it.
Yeah, we made a 360-degree turn, but the plane that had the bomb sight on it could not see the target. And so we made a 360-degree turn and went over the target again. And when we turned off of the target to make the 360-degree, I was looking at that barrage flak. And we had to fly right through it. And we really lost 3 engines over the target. See, they were 2, 3, and 4 engine, wasn't nothing except the number 1 engine out on our left wing. That's the only power we had, and of course we started dropping. It was real rough that day. It was bad that day, because when we made that 360-degree turn, I was in the tail. You don't sit in the tail; you on your knees back there. See, so I saw several planes go down of our B-17s. In fact, when the war was over with, I checked back on that day, and we lost 56 bombers that day.
Wow.
And but anyway, it wasn't a good day for us.
You gradually lost the ability to maintain your altitude.
Well, with one engine, you couldn't maintain your altitude. We were up at 5,000 feet. We had to leave. We left our group, and our group had to go on without us because we couldn't keep up. See, so we gradually lost altitude for the next 2.5 hours or so. We threw everything out of that airplane that weighed anything at all, and to make the airplane as light as we could get it. And we even dropped the ball turret, see, and that, but anyway, after about 2.5 hours, our number one engine just quit. It stopped, and then really don't anybody have to tell you to bail out. You're going to go because that airplane is going to hit the ground, see, and you're not going to land it because in fact, we couldn't even see the ground. But I bailed out, and we were about 1,800 feet when I bailed out, and once I opened my chute, once I saw the ground and I opened the chute, 20 seconds later I was on the ground. It didn't take no time to get down. See, so, but anyway, it wasn't a good day for us.
You had a few people waiting for you down there.
Yeah, there were some Germans. They were on their way up to where I was coming down, and and I was landed right in the middle of a big plowed field. See, and this was in the latter part of November. See, and it was, well, that was the making of a bad day,
Absolutely.
See.
So you were taken then, and interrogation took place.
Oh yeah, we walked for about a mile or two into a village, and that's where in this village is where we started. They started interrogating us, the ones that they brought into the village, and it was 2 of us in a room. That was where we were being interrogated, and they asked a lot of questions. The only thing they got out of either one of us was our name, rank, and serial number. See, and, but they questioned us like that for about an hour and a half, I guess. See,
So tell me a little bit more about what happened during this interrogation, and particularly when you responded to what your age was.
Well, they kept questioning. They wanted to know all kinds of things, even where we lived, and was our mother and father living, how many children was in the family. They wanted to know everything. And well, about every 5 minutes, the only thing we'd tell them is our name, rank, serial number. See, and finally one of the guys asked, he said, well, tell me how old you are. It's, that can't hurt your government. And this, the other guy that was with me on the other end of the beach that I was on, and so he said he was 26. And I told them, they looked at me and I said, I'm 19, see. But I was only 19 2 days. I was early 19, see. But that German soldier told me, he said, well, you're awful young. I said, well, I'm old enough. And like that, I come right back at him, and he didn't like that. So he told me to stand up. And I stood up, and he wanted to know if I wanted to tell my parents, send any message to my family. And I told him no. Told me to put my hands on the back of my head, and that's when they took me out, see. And, well, you want to know the rest of it?
Yeah, I do.
Well, we were in a village, And there's wasn't maybe 10 or 8 or 10 houses in this village. But anyway, we went down the bottom of the steps, the back door of that house we were in. And the barn is hooked right onto the house, and we went right straight into the barn. And there was a woman in there milking a cow. I remember that very clearly. See? And we went out to the back of the barn, about 150 feet away from the barn. I still had my hands behind my head, and we were out in a pasture, I guess it was, out there. And this guy told me to stop, and I stopped, and he came up and he turned me around. And when he turned me around, I was facing the man with one of these Burt guns, these machine guns back then. And I saw him standing there. And then he turned, that was the same guy that was in the room that I was in. Now, when they were interrogating us, one of the guys, and then he came up and turned me back around, where my back was to him. Then I heard him say something, and then the bullets went off. They fired that gun. And I never forget it. I can remember it as if it was yesterday. And I looked down like that to see if I had the holes in me. See, and then the guy came over and turned me back around. We went back in the house into another room in there. See, and they went over and stood me in a corner. It wasn't in that room. It wasn't nothing but 2 tables, one in front of a fireplace and one in front on the wall. And they stood me over in the corner and told me to come to attention, and I did. And I stood at attention in that corner. And about an hour later, I put my elbow up on my shoulder up on one of the walls, and that guy pulled a bolt back on that gun laying on that table right there and screamed at me and told me to stand at attention. And I stood there for 3 hours. I was looking at that clock on that mantel. See, that's the reason I know how long I stood there. And my whole body was numb, because you can't stand at attention like that, forever. And so finally, after about an hour, I put that shoulder on that wall. That's when he screamed at me, and I stood back up for another 2 hours. And then they brought me a chair, and I sat in that chair for 25 hours. See? And finally, a guy came in the room there, had an apple in his hand. And he asked me if I'd like to have that apple. I said, yes. And I ate that apple, seeds and all. I like it. I haven't had anything to eat now and since, a day and a half, or 2 days, really. Then he asked me, he said, you wanted to go to the toilet? I said, yeah, I sure did. And it's been all that length of time, see. That was a day. But anyway, things got a little better. They took me out of that house and took me down into another house down there, and that's where 3 more of our guys were. See? And they stopped interrogating me at that point in that village. Now, they interrogated me later in another town we went to. See, but
Then you went on to the actual prison camp. Were you in just one prison camp?
No, they took us to a huge building near Frankfurt, Germany. We went on a train there, and they interrogated us again, and then they put us in a town in Wetzlar, in a prison camp in Wetzlar, which is actually wasn't a permanent prison camp. It was a sort of where you go, and when they get you assigned to where they're going to send you. It took us about 2 weeks there. And in fact, I even met a guy from Burlington in that camp. He was wounded, then they sent us, when we got the assigned prison camp we were going to, they put us in a boxcar. We had half of a boxcar, and there were 6 guards that had the other half. And right in the middle of it was a big old pot-bellied stove, and there was some straw up in there that in our half of it, well, you had to sleep on or sit on it and sleep on it, because there wasn't nothing in that boxcar except it was just empty boxcar. But the only heat in there now, this is in the wintertime in Germany, and they had a pot-bellied stove right out in the middle of that boxcar. So the guards had one half, 30 of us had the other half. We spent 4 days in that boxcar like that. We were going north, and they took us to a town called Barth up on the Stalag Luft 1 camp that we were going to, and that's up on the Baltic Sea, up in the northern part of Germany. It took us 4 days in that boxcar like that. It was different, see? It was different in 4 days in the wintertime in a boxcar like that, with no more than a handful of food, sleeping on straw. It wasn't
not fun.
It wasn't a lot of fun.
No, not fun.
Yeah. But we got into the main camp, our camp that we was going to spend the rest of. We spent there and the rest of the time in that camp until the war was over. See.
It was Stalag
Luft 1 up in Barth, Germany. I will forget, it was in actually when the war was over, it was in the eastern zone, the Russian section of Germany. So when they opened up for the East and West Germany back in the early 90s, I believe it was, or maybe the late 80s, I went up to that camp. I tried to find the camp, and I did. I found where it was. I went back to Germany and went up there. Incidentally, I married a German in this country. So she'd always told everybody I got captured twice. So, but anyway, it was interesting. It was different.
When came time, just briefly about your treatment in the prison camp.
Oh, the treatment was. We didn't have to do anything. I was in a room the room was about, let's say, 16 by 16, or 20, maybe a 20 by 20 room. There was 25 of us in there.
Wow.
So, when you were in the Air Force, the instant you put your foot on foreign soil, you became